Hello, welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be part 6 of my series on Jude the Obscure. Part 6 is the final part of the novel. So this is going to be like a slight part 6 recap, and then some of my concluding thoughts on the novel. So part 6 is a little bit of a longer part. It's 11 chapters. Part 5 was, I believe, only 8 chapters, so it's a little longer. We have a little bit more material, a little bit more time to get some more of the story. Part 6 is easily the most depressing part of any of the others. It was certainly the heaviest I felt. It is the concluding part, so sort of everything is wrapped up, and then definitely it all hits you at the very end. At least for me, it did. Slowly throughout the entire novel, there are lots of small events, little moments that certainly really grab you as the reader, and it sort of builds this snowball effect of tragedies building on top of each other, slowly culminating in this ultimate tragedy, which is the ending of the story. And so you certainly feel that snowball effect through the first 5 parts, and then in this final part, part 6, I really feel like everything fully culminated into this epic tragedy that this novel is. It certainly is by far the most depressing novel that I have read, probably ever, honestly, just because of how many layers there are and how much is happening and how much goes wrong. I don't think I've ever read a novel where there wasn't a happy moment. Certainly, this novel, there are no happy moments. Any happy moment is ultimately tainted by another equally tragic moment to follow it. And Thomas Hardy's Far from the Madding Crowd, which I read a couple weeks ago, sorry. It was similar in that it was definitely gloomy, and I got some comments of people saying, if you think this is gloomy, just wait till you read Jude the Obscure. It gets worse, basically. And I definitely have changed a lot of my opinions on the tone of Far from the Madding Crowd. In comparison to Jude the Obscure, it is a happy novel. In Jude the Obscure, nothing good happens. I really have not witnessed any moment that something good came out of. There were moments that you maybe thought were happy, or maybe thought were at least maybe positive, a positive event in the characters' lives, and then you would read a couple more chapters, a couple more sections, whatever it may be, and whatever moment you thought was going to produce some sort of positive outcome would immediately be taken out by some equally or even greater tragic event to follow. So all that to say is part 6 is loaded with a ton of these little tragic moments that build up to this ultimate tragic ending. In part 6, and I don't want to give just a solid summary of the entire part. I've done that in the first 5 videos, and I realized kind of by doing that, I wasn't really sharing much of the experience of reading it. I was more just kind of regurgitating the facts and the play-by-play of that part, which I think there is a valid place for that, but it's not entirely the point of this format I'm trying to do. And so I will still give that summary, but I also want to give just a little bit more info about the experience of reading it, and more of what the reader gets from this novel. And so in part 6, we have Jude's son, moving back to Christminster. In the end of part 5, they decided to move back to the city to get away from places where people knew them the most because of some of the negative opinions that were being cast about their life choices, their marriage decision, whatever you want to call it. And so they decided they needed to live somewhere where people didn't remember them or didn't know them quite as well. And so they decided the best or Jude decided that the best thing for him to do would be to move his family back to Christminster. And so in the beginning of part 6, that is where we meet our characters again. We meet them moving back to the city, and Jude has planned it so that they can enter the city on Remembrance Day, which is a festival day that is in commemoration of the starting of the universities in Christminster, essentially. So it's a very academic celebration day. It's a very exciting day for the students of these different universities, for the professors of these different universities. There are different ceremonies going on where different dignitary figures or leadership figures are being presented with honorary doctorate degrees from these different universities, and so it's a really happy, festive moment in the city, which is an interesting sort of positioned next to the almost unbearable gloom and melancholy of Jude and Sue and their lives coming in to the city onto such a happy day, a joyous day in the city. It certainly is an interesting sort of juxtaposition of those two emotional scenarios taking place within the city. And so the first thing that they do is they look for lodging. Of course, Jude is out of employment at this point. He's looking for a new job. He left his old job, obviously, when he decided to move to the city. And so they need to get lodging. And they decide to lodge separately. Sue will lodge with Jude's son, and Jude will lodge alone. They try to get lodging together. Having the child complicates matters. Lots of the inns and the innkeepers that they spoke to didn't want a child staying in their establishment. So Jude leaves them. He gets his own room at a separate inn, and Sue and little Father Time, or little Jude, get a room at a separate place that they finally found that would allow children in. We have a really interesting conversation their first night in their new lodging. Sue and little Jude have a discussion about the burden of children on their parents and the burden of children on the world. And little Jude says some remarks that basically he feels that it is his fault that Jude and Sue have fallen on such hard times, and that he is the reason that they aren't able to pursue their dreams in life, and he's holding them back, and all this very untrue stuff, but stuff that he feels very strongly about, that he is the problem. And Sue tells him that it's the burden of nature, and it's natural for a child to be a burden on their parents for a certain time, because then the child will grow up and be able to help the parents in return. And throughout this conversation, Sue also just happens to mention that she's pregnant with her own child. And little Jude gets very upset with her about this. He feels that she is bringing their family to the brink of ruin. Of course, this is a child talking. And so in this conversation, it was easy to forget that it was a child talking, because you feel like it's an adult talking to Sue about her choices and how she's ruining the family and whatnot. But it's like an 8-year-old kid telling her all this. And so that's a really interesting conversation that takes place there. And it comes into play a little later in this part in a big way. So then essentially they are looking for more permanent lodging, for better lodging. They're in the city. It's this Remembrance Day festival. Jude runs into some old drinking mates that he had in the past. That we actually have this scene earlier on in the book. It's the drinking scene when he is reciting the creed in Latin to prove that even though he wasn't a part of a university, that he still has a high education, that he still is highly intelligent, whatnot. So he sees this group of old drinking mates, and it sort of humiliates him, because they have proceeded on in their time in the universities, and they are now taking part in this Remembrance Day festival, which is a festival that Jude wants to be a part of. And so he deals with a lot of his emotions, his negative emotions, pertaining to his inability to be accepted into a university, his life as sort of a lower class citizen. He has pinned himself as that, not so much as people have been telling him that, although there have been multiple characters who have sort of beaten him down for not taking part in university, but he has sort of branded himself this lower level citizen for not having taken place in these certain academic institutions. And so he's just very downcast. And by this time in the novel, we are incredibly used, as the reader, we are incredibly used to Jude being depressed, being down, being moody, being gloomy, being contemplative, being thinky, not talking through his true emotions in any way, shape, or form, sort of bottling them all up, and them eating him from the inside out. That continues on through this entire sixth part, and we see this emotion, this sort of brooding start to rub off on a lot of the other characters. And the feeling that I have had throughout all of this novel of all these characters just falling apart. No one's talking to each other. No one is able to communicate deeply what they are feeling. Instead, they choose non-important elements of their lives to debate about and to talk about instead of focusing on the things that are actually bothering them. So no one ever really talks. Everyone also expects the other person to take charge of the situation. No one takes any personal responsibility. Everyone is always waiting for someone else to do something. Jude is always waiting for Sue to do or say something. Arabella is always waiting for Jude to say something. Phillotson is always waiting for Sue to say something, and it just goes around and around in this way of everyone pinning their expectations for the future onto someone else, and then that other person never delivers on this unspoken expectation, and so grudges are formed, rivalries are formed, hatred just sort of festers and brews and boils over eventually. We've seen that happen a couple times throughout this novel. It certainly happens a lot in part 6. We have a lot of these sort of confrontational encounters between characters. Almost every character has a different confrontational encounter with another character in part 6, in different groupings. Sue and Jude obviously go at it. Arabella and Jude get mad at each other. Phillotson and Sue, Phillotson and Arabella. And we have everyone sort of battling it out with all the other characters of the cast. And so in the middle of part 6 is when we get a really one of the big tragic moments of the story. And that is Sue leaves one morning, leaves their lodging. It's the morning after the conversation with little Jude. She goes across the street to the other end where Jude is staying to talk with him. So they're talking about their marriage. They're talking about the possibility of what their life is going to look like. Sue is bringing up Arabella again. She always brings up Arabella in every conversation with Jude, sort of because she knows it's a sore point and she wants to kind of keep reminding Jude of that time in his life. But also it's because she's incredibly insecure in herself. She's always pinning her own image up against Arabella. And so she likes to bring it up in every conversation that she can with Jude, almost as a way of getting Jude to say certain things about how she is, in fact, better than Arabella was, in order to allow, basically, to calm her insecurities, to boost her ego. And so when Jude and Sue go back across the street, Jude goes with Sue back over to the old lodging. They find the bodies of the children, little Jude and Sue's other 2 older children. She's pregnant with her 3rd child. Jude and Sue already had 2 other children together. They walk into the room and they see the 3 bodies of the children dead. Little Jude has killed the younger 2 siblings and then killed himself, and left a note that basically said something to the effect of, we were your burden and we have now left you so that you can have a better life, or something along these lines. Absolutely tragic, an absolutely horrific moment in the story where these children, where the negative emotion and the effects of Jude and Sue's sort of strained relationship has cast that casted that feeling of gloom and devastation on this already devastated child who was mentally much older than he was, who felt the weight of the world much too acutely for a child of his age, and felt absolutely devastated by the world, and could not handle it. And it manifested in him taking his own life and killing the other two children who were completely innocent in life and didn't understand to the level that little Jude did, sort of their what they were causing their parents to go through. And of course, it was not the children's fault. It was not little Jude's fault at all. He took responsibility for something that he had no control over whatsoever. It was incredibly not his fault. In every way, he was completely innocent in the situation. But he took it much differently. He took it as that he was the problem. And so Jude and Sue obviously are completely devastated by this, losing all of their children, Jude and Sue losing their two, and Jude losing his son, all in the same moment, is absolutely devastating for them. And it wrecks Sue. And it really spins her, and it really causes her to have a mental breakdown. An even greater mental breakdown than she has been suffering through the entire novel. All of them have had a mental breakdown the entire time. And so Sue decides that she needs to go back to Phillotson, that Phillotson is the only one who owns her, is how she phrases it in the novel, which of course is very strange, and she has a very strange viewpoint of what a marriage is supposed to be. Obviously, some of that is the time that the novel is written, sort of the social expectation that's cast upon her. But so she decides she needs to go back to Phillotson. She goes back to Phillotson. Phillotson takes her back. He agrees to marry her again, and agrees that he will continue to give her her private space. So it will be more a marriage of convenience, a marriage, an economic proposition, rather than a romantic marriage. Sue, that's what Sue wants. Phillotson is willing to go there because he wants to keep Sue with him, because he does love her. And so basically we have all of their characters sort of going back to the original person that they started the novel with. Jude goes back with Arabella takes Jude back. Jude is absolutely crushed because of the loss of the children, because of what's going on with Sue, because of what's going on mentally with him, battling his own demons of not being able to achieve his dream of graduating from university. Arabella takes him back. They stay in Arabella's father's home. Her father's back from Australia. And basically through a process of getting Jude drunk every day and talking with him, she gets Jude to agree to marry her again. And basically from here on out, Jude is just completely drunk every single day until the end of the novel. And so he is completely incoherent. He talks, he has conversations, but he doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know what he's agreeing to. And so essentially towards the end of the novel, he comes to some sort of clearness of thought, some sort of better constitution, where he's able to understand sort of what's going on. And he realizes that he's married to Arabella now, that his life is back to how it was when he originally gave up his academic dreams, that he is stuck in this loop of tragedies that is constantly replaying, and it's like a wave he is unable to get out of, this current that just keeps pulling him around. And so he gets incredibly sick. He stops taking care of himself. His mental health eventually changes his entire physical health to match it, and so he gets incredibly sick. Arabella goes back to her old tendencies of telling Jude all of the problems she has with him, even though she was the one who brought him back. She's mad that he's always sick. She doesn't understand why he has to always be sick. And she wants him to make better money for her and do all this stuff for her, and she takes the victim mindset, even though she was the one who basically tricked Jude a second time into a relationship with her. She tricked him in the very beginning of the novel, that first time, and that's when little Jude was born, not born, but conceived and born later, and she tricks him again, and he falls for it again, and he realizes that he mentally is very weak, and he is easily swayed into these situations. And so he has all these levels of anger at himself, at Arabella, at the world around him. He is depressed. He doesn't see value in anything anymore. He has no personality at this point. He is completely destroyed. He has been completely destroyed through this entire novel, and it's slowly been chipping away at him. And he is no longer a person, but just an empty shell, essentially, at this point, which most of the other characters are the same way as well. There are lots of interactions between Arabella and Jude and Sue and Phillotson, and Jude asking for Sue to come back and see him because he knows he's about to die and he wants to see her again before he dies. He asks Arabella to write a letter to Sue. Arabella writes the letter but never posts it. So Jude goes out one night to try to find Sue. They have this confrontation. They have this talk when Jude's out in the night, and he's completely a shell of himself. He is coughing all the time. He's dying. He's awful. He looks awful. Everyone's commenting on how terrible he looks. He needs a doctor. All of this. So he sees Sue for the last time, and he tells Arabella he wants to go home. After seeing her, he has completed the two things he wanted out of the rest of his life: to see Sue again and to die. He's seen Sue, now he wants to die. They go back to the house. Arabella is at this point completely removed again emotionally from him. She leaves one day to go to this basically this maritime race, this boat race, and it's this big festival. It's Remembrance Day again, so it's a year later. A year has transpired towards from the beginning of part 6 to the end of part 6. She wants to go to this boat race, maritime race gathering, whatever you want to call it. She goes to this. Meanwhile, while she's gone, Jude basically starts to take his last breaths, and he starts to call out to Sue, to Arabella, to someone to help him. He wants water. He calls out for water. No one comes. He realizes he's alone. He realizes it's Remembrance Day again. He starts spitting off quotes from the book of Job, and sort of saying these passages to himself aloud, to try to calm him, or whatever he may have been thinking or not thinking. And then he dies. He takes his final breath and he dies. Arabella comes back, goes up to check on him. The people she went to the race with enter into the house, and they ask her how her husband's doing. They know he is ill. She comes down and says, "Oh, he's doing fine. He's sleeping very hard. He won't, we won't awake him by talking down here." She knows he's dead. And she goes on with her day. She goes on with this little, this festival that she's attending. That closer to the end of that day, she goes and gets the doctor to come and take care of the body, to lay it out on the bed and cover it with a sheet and prepare it for burial. And Arabella and Mrs. Edlin, who is the widow who took care of Jude's aunt, are in the house there, and they are sort of looking over Jude's body. And Miss Edlin says something about what a handsome man he was, and Arabella agrees. Yes, he was very handsome. This and that, the other, and sort of just talking about Jude's life. And then Arabella basically says that she hopes that Sue can have the same fate as Jude. They both, they were so similar in life. They both need the same passing. And basically saying she wants Sue to die because she doesn't like Sue either. She's happy Jude's gone in a way because she can go marry someone with wealth. What really is odd is, of course, Arabella essentially tricked Jude again into marriage with her, and it's this. She has this strange philosophy going on in her life of whatever man she's with, whatever person she's with. Immediately, once she gets with them, she wants somebody else. And so the whole novel, she wants to be with Jude again. She gets with Jude again, and she immediately wants to be with someone else again. And it's incredibly frustrating to read, obviously. But the novel ends. The last scene of the novel is Sue and Mrs. Edlin standing over the dead body of Jude laying on the bed. And that's how the novel ends. Which, of course, I knew it was going to end incredibly tragically. I knew it was going to end incredibly abruptly because there would be no quick way to wrap up a story like this. And so Hardy just has it stop. He just stopped writing. Jude's dead. Jude's dead. Arabella doesn't really care. Miss Edlin is sad because she liked Jude. Obviously, she was a part of their family. Sue is out, married to Phillotson, not happy. Phillotson's not really that happy. And it's over. It's over. I did just realize one other moment that I've got to mention is Sue's baby that she was pregnant with. When she delivers the baby, it's stillborn. And so all of her children have been killed, and then her third child was a stillborn. So that was another piece of what sent her into this sort of mental spin out that she was suffering from the rest of the novel. So that's part 6. That's the conclusion. That's the end of Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. I really did enjoy this novel. It was fantastic. It was tragic, heartbreaking, incredibly bleak the entire time, incredibly dark. The prose are beautiful, though. The descriptions are beautiful. The conversations are incredibly lifelike, and you truly do find sympathies for all of these characters. Even though time and time again they make the worst decisions, the most frustrating decisions, or they keep falling into these old patterns, you still feel for them. You feel their humanity. You feel their pain and their inability to escape this negative cycle that they are all trapped in. A lot of it is their own choice. A lot of it was caused by their own choice. A lot of it, too, though, was caused by the social structures of the day and by their placement that they were given within society and sort of the ways that society worked. And it's absolutely heartbreaking, and you feel brokenhearted for every one of these characters. Of course, you feel incredibly frustrated towards most of them most of the time as well, because you can see the patterns and the decisions that they're making, and you know that they can't see them, or they're choosing to ignore those patterns and not to observe them. And so it's absolutely irksome because they keep making these same mistakes, and you as the reader know that, and you can't get them to stop. But I absolutely loved it. I would highly recommend it. Don't read it if you are not feeling emotionally up for a story of this sort of weight, because it is heavy, but it's absolutely worth it. It's incredible. It certainly will be a reread for me sometime in the future, and I certainly will continue on with reading Hardy's works because he is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This is definitely a longer video than the others that I have been doing, but if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.